These are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Hopefully everybody is connected and can hear me okay. My name is Mihal. I'll be moderating the webinar today and looking after everybody. Joining me on the call is Jonathan Weisglass, who is our education manager here at BrightWork. Can you hear us okay, Jonathan?
Yes.
Excellent, you're very welcome. And everybody else that is joining us is also very welcome. Jonathan's been working closely with our customers for a number of years, so some of you may even be familiar with them. Today, we are going to look at project and portfolio status reporting with Microsoft 365. So I guess what we'll be looking at here is like making sure that we've got accurate, up-to-date and accessible project reports, which is obviously key to understanding your project progress, and it helps teams to make better, more informed decisions. Project reporting, I guess, creates a one-stop shop for information. So we want to keep everything in one place so that we can improve project and portfolio reporting. And we're going to look at that using Microsoft 365 tools in particular, and specifically through our product, BrightWork 365. Before we jump into the content today, we've got loads to go through. I just have one or two housekeeping items. We are assuming and we're hoping that you've lots of questions throughout the demonstration. If you do have a question, please do add it to the questions panel and go to webinar, which you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen. Well, that's where it is for me. You may need to expand it out with a little arrow. Once Jonathan has gone through our demonstration today, we'll answer as many questions as come through. We'll also give you some contact details if you think of any questions after, or you want to talk to us about what you saw. Secondly, this webinar is being recorded, so don't worry too much about taking any notes. You will receive an email tomorrow from my colleague Adam with a link to the recording and the slide deck. So keep an eye out for that, and you can watch back whatever we look at today, and you can share it with your colleagues. Okay, for now, I think I might hand over to you, Jonathan, and we'll take a look at the agenda, and I'll be on hand to help out, answer questions, and I'll chat to you all at the end as well, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, thanks for that intro, Mihal. So everybody's very welcome. Today we'll be talking about project and portfolio status reporting with Microsoft 365 and BrightWork 365. The agenda, as you see here, is we're going to start with a quick overview of what is BrightWork 365. Sort of set the context for those of you who may not be familiar. That'll be fairly quick, and as we get to other items in the agenda, we'll dive deeper. The second thing is, how do you get visibility into your project and portfolio health? You can't really create status reports unless you have your finger on the pulse of what's actually going on. So we'll look at some ideas to do that. Part of that, in terms of what is the health, is your current resource allocation and utilization. There are differences between allocation and utilization. We'll talk a bit about that. And then finally, it kind of culminates in creating that report. You have choices. You can create it for just projects. You could create it for portfolios, programs. They're all very similar in terms of how you do that. And we'll end with some Q&A. Mihal will come back on the line for that bit. So actually, Mihal's going to come back on the line right now to just introduce a quick poll.
Yeah, I just want to figure out what the biggest project management reporting challenge people have. And obviously, we couldn't cover everything, but just to get a sense of why people are here, there's a couple of options here. So I guess, is it a lack of processes? Do you not have time? Is it specifically project reporting, or is it multiple reporting, or is it everything? So let's just let that run for a couple of seconds, folks. And it's overwhelmingly for all of the above. So, I mean, that's good. A couple of people voting on lack of processes. So let's just let that run for another couple of seconds, if you don't mind. We'll wait till everybody has had a chance. I think about half the people have voted. hopefully you'll see something today that answers your biggest project management challenge. Okay, cool. Thanks for that, folks. Appreciate it. I'm just going to close that out now. Cool,
Okay.
that's great. So it was pretty much split
Great.
in lack of processes and finding reporting too time consuming, Jonathan. So
Sounds good. Yeah,
people might see something in this.
Yeah, I sure hope so, and thanks to everybody who took the poll there. So we're gonna start with just a few slides, very few, and then we're gonna get into a live demo, and then we'll come back to some slides at the end. So here's the few in the beginning. So I'm just gonna be going down these columns there. So what is BrightWork? BrightWork's been in the project and portfolio management business, software business, for over 25 years. We have a product on BrightWork for SharePoint, as well as BrightWork for Microsoft 365. It's the latter that we're going to be talking about today. We believe in what we call a start evolve framework. I'll get more into that in just a bit. And of course, BrightWork, we've experience with services as well as software. So we have a customer success division. Think of it as like a master consultancy to help you with all things project management, or most things project management. The product interfaces with Microsoft 365 or integrates. Could sort of many of things, including this. We could have a whole webinar just on particular aspects, including this. So just briefly, we integrate with Microsoft Teams. Or the document management would be on your tenant's SharePoint online. It'll be within everything is your Azure Active Directory, as well as the Microsoft Office applications, Word, Excel, OneNote, Outlook. There's lots of great integration with all of that. And of course, we're built on the Microsoft Power Platform, so we are a Power App within that platform. We utilize Power BI. That's optional. I mean, I'll get into this as well, but we provide you with Power BI reports. It's up to you whether or not you choose to use them, or whether or not you have that particular license for Microsoft. We have non-Power BI reports as well. Lots of Power Automate going on, workflow in the background. That's all built for you. And again, in your Microsoft Dataverse is where the data is actually housed. The BrightWork approach. So this is going to be evidenced in our documentation, in our consultancy approach. It's start, evolve. We want you to kind of get started quickly with our product and have sort of a roadmap of how that's going to evolve over time. So, you'll engage with our customer success partners, get something in place again fairly quickly, have a backlog of how you might want to customize the product and your processes down the line. So that would be the evolve piece. So think of BrightWork as when you're getting the software from us, you're also getting a relationship. It's not just the product, and that relationship helps you get from start to evolve. It's also built into our templates. So you'll see we have, when it comes to requests, when it comes to the actual project management templates, there's some evolution in there as well. Okay, on to the live demo. Let me bring this screen up here. Right, so this would be the quick overview before I get into some of the project status pieces. So the quick overview, well, you see the home page here. We have lots of metrics here about what's going on in this particular installation, this demo installation of BrightWork. There's request information, a tally of what's going on there number-wise, how many projects there are, how many projects I am a principal on. And as you can see on the right side here, there's one portfolio and there's several programs that are part of that portfolio. You're not limited in terms of the number. You could have many portfolios, many programs. It's sort of how you decide to, how these things are divided up within your organization. So a lot of flexibility there. When you first get the BrightWork 365 product, you're going to first create at least one portfolio. Again, you could have many, but there'll be at least one portfolio. Very easy to create that. You just click on new. Won't get into too many mechanical things for this webinar, but you can see it's really a fully fleshed out portfolio. There's status reporting, which we'll get to later, document management, all these pieces that you see here. So that could be managed at the portfolio level as well as the child levels. It's really up to you. You can choose to go as light or as heavy in terms of your portfolio management through what you see here. Then there's going to be child programs, right? So that's what you see here. I could click on programs on the left, or I could just very easily see what are the child programs of this particular portfolio. So I could just pick on product development. For example, now we're in the program level. We try to keep things as consistent as possible, so this should look very familiar to what I just showed you at the portfolio level. We have a statement, which is kind of high level, mostly static information about the program, as well as moving pieces, right? Status and documents and different action items, issues, risks, that could all be done at the program level. So at least one portfolio, one program gets created. Your next stop would probably be to create requests, right? So before the projects get created, you'll go ahead and have various folks in your organization create requests. Now, in terms of the start evolve piece, you could choose how complex or how easy it is in terms of your request management process. So when I click on new, for example, again, I won't get too deep into this, but I'm going to create a new request. I'd give it a better name than that, of course, in the real world. And you can see we have many different request templates that you can choose from. So it could be maybe you just want to create sort of a generic request for a new project, which would lead into a generic project template to actually do the management. Maybe you want something more structured, a little bit more involved. This particular request might be about a new product idea. So when we say product, I mean, it's really up to your business, but it could be maybe an internally developed piece of software, or doesn't even have to be software, something that you develop in-house. It could be a new product that you're introducing from outside. So there's a request template, as well as, like I said, once the request becomes a project, that would lead into a project template geared towards a new product idea. Or maybe it's going to be an update to a product. Let me just click on that, make believe. So we're still in the request. I chose product update. So this would be where you've already unleashed the initial product into your organization. Again, either something in-house or external. And now you're going to be releasing a new iteration of that product. So you would choose this template perhaps for the request piece. And once this all gets filled out and goes through an approval process, either a very simple approval process, which could be where things just automatically get approved, or it could be a more complex approval process for the request, where you might have more than one person who actually has to approve the request before the project gets created. For this particular request, if I click on approvals, you'll see just how simple or more complex this particular request would be. So you can see there's going to be two stages that this request would go through. It has to get from draft to accepted, which would be this person, and then it has to go from accepted to approved, which would be this other person. It could be more than one person. Or as I mentioned, you might choose a different request template where there's 0 approvals required. In addition to the approvals, we could just look at the project. We can get a glimpse of what the future project is going to be based on. So should this request get approved, the project that gets created, and we'll look at projects in just a second, is going to be based on the product update template, which makes sense since the request was called product update. It's going to actually come with some data, pre-packaged data along with it. It doesn't have to. You can have a totally blank project that gets created. In this case, however, it's going to come along with this optional content template. So that means when this project gets created, it's going to not only have like the structure of the project, place for risks, issues, status. It also come with tasks built into the Gantt, as well as it might come pre-populated with some risks and stages, some other bits as well. And you can see who we're kind of pre-populating as the project manager and the project sponsor. We're still in the request. Project hasn't get created, but again, as I mentioned, it's giving you a glimpse what that project will look like when it does get created. So you go through that whole process. Again, that's a webinar of its own. Lots of exciting stuff there. The project gets created. It either gets created through a formal request, or if you have the appropriate permissions, you can come straight to this project section and click on new and just get a project created real fast. You'll still be choosing who's the project manager, who's the sponsor, what template should it be built from. You just won't have to go through that request process. So let's just take kind of a quick look at what a built out project looks like. So this project got created. It has the skeleton or the bones or the architecture of what a new product introduction project would look like. It has a charter page, high level information. Again, mostly static information you'll see there. We have status, which we'll get into a little bit later. We have a list of who's on the team, quite a bunch of people who are on this team. This typically will automatically get filled in as you assign people to various types of work, but you could also add people ad hoc if you need to. Let's just look at that Gantt. So we have a fully functional Gantt chart here. Again, this deserves a webinar of its own, but it's doing all sorts of calculations. You can create dependencies. You can have parent levels, which would most likely be stages. Those stages usually would match what we call what we have up here, which is going to be sort of stages as well, and it kind of keeps track of where you are in the current stages. There's going to be approvals. Most of our templates would have an approval process to go from one stage to the next as well. And similar to requests, it could be as simple or as complex or an approval process to get from one stage to the next as you wish. You have documents, again, are going to be stored on your SharePoint Online, a list of action items. Those action items, they could be different types. Let me just click on new. It could be like a straight action item if you want. It could be maybe you're going to be assigning a decision that has to be made to somebody. See, I think this one is particularly great because decisions are one of those things in project management which often get they get delayed, they get forgotten, they fall through various cracks. So instead of just like having a meeting and saying, Jim or Mary, you have a decision to make, it's due next week, why not document it? So we give you a place to document that as well. Maybe you have a change request. Something, maybe the scope is going to change or the budget's going to change. So again, instead of having it fall through cracks, you can create an action for that. And of course, we have a place for you to capture issues. We'll look at issues a little bit later. I often say project management is really issue management. It's very rare a project which isn't going to have issues. Having a place to manage those and stay on top of them, in my opinion, is a great way to keep your project on track. Place for risks, costs and budgets, communications, and this is where I mentioned approvals. So you could see here, this is a fairly mature approval process to get from one stage of the project to the next. We have an overall coordinator who's going to be kind of managing things and getting updates about how these approvals are going. And you can assign various people if you want them to have to approve going from one stage to the next. So that's our projects. And there's reports, again, not to spend too much time on this, what I originally called a quick overview, turning into something a little more quick plus, I'll call it. But if you want to do report on issues, you can click on issues. You can get a list of all those. We'll get into these as well. And there's also like various more admin type spaces as opposed to just your typical end user that they can get into also. But let's not click on that just now. All right, the other thing I need to mention is we do have a knowledge base. So things that I'm kind of going quickly through here, you're all welcome to go to our knowledge base, which let's just click on there. Well, you can get in there from here. There's a direct URL as well, which you can get after you can speak with some of our colleagues. They'll give you access to that. Today, we're going to be talking on things that are going to be within the projects category, within the portfolios category. We'll get into resource utilization, for example. So plenty of ways to dig in further to that. Okay, so the next agenda item is how do we get visibility into what the actual health is of the projects and the overall portfolio? Well, one thing we can do is we can click into the relevant portfolio, and we can see right away, without even clicking into it, that there is a health. The health is not green, right? So there's something going on. So if I'm going to be reporting on either the status of a portfolio or maybe a project that's within this portfolio, before I go ahead and create that status report, I'm going to have to know somebody, probably the portfolio manager, feels that things are not all rosy at the moment. So I can click in there, and again, I'm not creating the status report just yet. I'm getting a feel for what is going on with the portfolio. If I want to dig a little deeper, besides just seeing that that it's yellow, I can click on the status tab, and I can see, well, what's mostly accounting for that yellow is excessive open issues. Green looks good, we're on budget, but we do have a red for our schedule or time. I can go even further and look at some previous status reports as well. Of course, I can create a brand new one, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Let me just click on this previous status report, and I can see here again. I'm getting a sense for either how the project that belongs to this portfolio is going, or how the portfolio as a whole is going. And I can see once again there's mention about well, budget constraints were a problem in the past. They might actually still be a problem. And I can see what the upcoming focus was for this entire portfolio. Similarly, I can get that same kind of feeling for what's going on, the pulse check, by going into whichever is the relevant program for the project that I'm going to be reporting on soon. I can go into, let's just go into marketing, go into status, and I can see here at the program level, things are not perfect. They're actually a little bit further away from being perfect at this particular program level. Health is red, cost and time are yellow. In this case, I don't have a comment, but in the real world, you'd probably want to put some comments in there. We can click on the status report for this program. Again, we'd be going into whichever program is relevant to the project that we're interested in creating a status report for. Nothing there. Let me just go into customer success. Yeah, no status report there either. So there might be a status report that would be an older one that might be relevant for you to look at. The other thing you'd probably want to take a look at is issues. So if I click on this issues report, again, this is not Power BI. This is all just built into the standard Power App. We can look at the open issues report. We can filter on the project that we're interested in creating a new status report over here. Let's just go into JDub widget green. And I can see here that things for this project, obviously we don't have too many open issues. So that's going to play into how I create that status report as well. I do see that it's not started. So let me just click in there. And there could have been potentially a due date on here, action requested by date. If I saw that due date had already passed, that would have something to do with how I feel the particular status is going for this project. We can get rid of this filter here. Let me just clear that filter. Check out one of our other projects that we might want to create a status report for. So I'm filtering open issues for this frozen desserts project. And we can see here we have 2 issues that are open. Let's see if we have any. So here we do have an action requested by. So the action requested was by May 24. I see that the status is not started. So this, I'll probably want to get on the phone, get a meeting with the person who is assigned this particular issue, and see if this is something that is still an issue, if maybe some data just wasn't updated. If it is still an issue and all of this is accurate, this is going to likely play into the creation of my status report for this particular project. Similarly, I could do the same thing for risks. Now, there might not be too many issues open or overdue for a particular project that I want to status on, but there might be some pretty serious risks coming up. So again, we can filter by a project that we're interested in at the moment. Let's just take a chance. See frozen desserts. So yes, quite a bit of open risks for this. It doesn't mean that those risks are around the corner. So they may not be something that I may choose to or choose not to report in my status report about these particular risks. I'm going to take a look at this one that has an exposure of 9. 9 is pretty much the highest. There'd be the highest impact to the project if this particular risk came to pass and turned into an issue. So let's take a look at this. So the most likely impact for this was, again, a month ago. So one of the good things about gearing up to create a status report is it gets the project manager to go in there and kind of remind himself or herself about other aspects of the project. So here, May 25th, apparently the project manager did not find out, whether or not this is still a risk. Did it actually come to pass? Was it just ignored? Is everything fine? Just, the data hasn't been updated. So what I would do here is I would get in touch with Sean and say, hey, we have a risk here about production equipment may malfunction. We thought that it would happen about a month ago. Did it actually malfunction? Are we now going to kick this down the road a little bit? Is the most likely impact date a little bit further? Depending on the answers that I get, this is going to again play into the status report that I create. Let's move on from here and let's talk about resource allocation, resource utilization. Because before I create the status report, I really want to kind of scour all aspects of the project so that I have an accurate status report. The actual creating of the status report is the easy part. You'll see that doesn't really take very much time. That's not very complicated. It's really all of this legwork that leads up to the creation of the status report that takes time. So we're first going to talk about resource allocation. This does not tell us whether or not people on my project are over or under allocated. That's going to be something I'm going to want to report on. Is my project, whatever it may be, A, B, or C, are they over allocated, under allocated, just right? So we're going to look at that in a minute. That's something that we call resource utilization. But just to get a sense of how is work progressing, that's going to be resource allocation. So I'm going to look at, this is just my work. I'm not, this is not about me, this upcoming status report. It's going to be about other work. So again, I have a whole bunch of information that's going to be across the board. This will be all the open work throughout all the portfolios, all the programs, but of course I can choose to filter. I can create my own custom filter, which maybe I'll choose to save, or I might just want to do sort of a temporary one-off filter, as we're standing here. So that could be by project, I could do it by program, I could do it by portfolio. Again, it depends at what level right now I'm interested in creating a status report for. At the moment, we're going to just keep plowing ahead towards creating a project status report. So I'm going to filter this long list by, let's just pick on that same project, frozen desserts. And I can see, wow, quite a lot of work is assigned within that project. Completed is great. I could see the due date was May 11th, so most likely I already kind of incorporated that particular piece of work in my prior status report. What I'm most interested in is going to be those pieces of work that have a due date that's past or is like maybe yesterday or today and hasn't even started yet or hasn't been completed yet. So before I go and create that status report, I'm going to take a look here at these pieces of work for that project, for that frozen desserts project that were due a couple of months ago, that were due last month, that were due the beginning of this month. I mean, you can see there's quite a bit for me to pick on here. So I'm going to get in touch with the assignees of these pieces of work that are either overdue or due real soon, and get a pulse check of those before I go ahead and create that that status report. I might find that this particular action item that was due a few weeks ago, maybe it's in progress still because of a budget issue. Could be. So it'll help me narrow it down. I can click into there just to get a little more information about it. Let me just click that. And you can see a whole form opens up, and this is this could help me to sort of get further context about this in progress assignment that hasn't been done on time. And again, that's going to play into my status report. Let's move on to resource utilization. So as opposed to allocation, which is what we were just in. So resource utilization, the main place I'm going to go to look for that is in the dashboard section of the app. Let's kind of work our way towards the utilization piece. I just want to introduce dashboards. So dashboard is going to be, it's going to be a bunch of charts, as you can see here. It's going to be a mix of plain old Power Apps charts, which you wouldn't need any extra additional licenses from Microsoft to be able to use, plus some Power BI reports that we always include in the product for those customers who have optionally chosen to purchase Power BI licenses from Microsoft. So the Power Apps ones, nobody should have any issues using. The Power BI ones, if you're not if you haven't purchased some additional Power BI specific licenses from Microsoft, you wouldn't be able to utilize these. But again, it's not something that we're holding back. It's just a licensing thing that you might want to consider purchasing from Microsoft. Now, just a real quick, we'll just look at those Power Apps ones that don't require that special Power BI license. So the way that these are organized is there's sort of like a mega bucket, right? So everything in here is going to be about requests. And then we sort of slice and dice them. So this is going to be a chart that's requests about request status. These are going to be all the requests that are, and we're going to be dividing them up by the requester person. You can see Alan's been quite busy submitting a bunch of requests. So that's going to be that, et cetera, et cetera. Here we have it divided up by the different types of requests, by the portfolio that it belongs to, et cetera. And you can dig into this even further. You can drill down even further. And all of that is going to be applicable to this set of reports that's about projects. And again, this might actually feed into your status report as well. I can get a sense how many projects have a green health, how many projects have a red health, and I can click on there and sort of, let me just click here. And I can see, okay, I know that there are 9 red ones, but what are those? And when I click on there, on red, you can see which specific projects are making up that red health. So another way for me to inform myself when it comes to creating a status report. For today, however, we are going to be focused on utilization. That's what I said I'm going to go to next. So I'm just going to go down to Resource Utilization, Power BI. And this is where we get to really dive deeply as to not only who's allocated work, but who's being underutilized, who's being utilized just right, perfectly, and who's overutilized here. So this is a Power BI report. Just kind of give you a brief tour. We have a legend, which explains to you, for example, anything in gray means that that person, for the time period that we're looking at, is underallocated. We have green, which is like a perfect state, right? They're fully allocated, 100%. You go a bit over that, things are not perfect anymore, but at the moment, at this exact moment, we could see that the green is perfectly fully allocated, and red would be over allocated. Again, for the time period that we're looking at. you could change that time period. I could look at this, 6 weeks. I could look at this over a period of 13 weeks, for example. We can change that to days, months, so this chart is gonna indicate that allocation percentage based on the date range that we have there. This is across all projects. If I want, I can just focus on one particular project. Let's go back to that frozen desserts, because that is what I'm interested in creating a status report real soon for. And I can see here, at least from a utilization perspective, over the time period that I chose here, we're looking okay. We're not over allocating any of our resources at the moment, but you could see we're right on the edge there, right? It's like primarily green, which means we're okay for now. But should any of those tasks on that project require additional resource input from any of these people, we're going to very quickly fall over into over allocated territory for any of these guys. So now I just informed myself about that. So when I go to create the status report, I'm going to probably make mention that for the moment, we're okay in terms of our resources, but it might become a risk. The risk might be, I might want to call out a risk in that resource report, in that status report, that we're on the edge here. Anything extra, we're going to push these guys over. If I want to dig deeper, of course, because I filtered it to frozen desserts, you can see that's the project that we're allocating folks to in this particular chart. I could dig deeper, so let me just drill on columns. Let me go a little bit deeper. So I'm going to drill on these columns. I'm going to go down a level. So you can see here I can get a daily view. So I can see that, Eamon, for example, let me just go back here. Eamon, for example, for each of these days, these individual days, the 29th, the 30th, then it skips to the next Monday. For every single day, he's actually 100% allocated. So it's not just that he's maybe he's like he's got more hours on one particular day than the other day, and we can kind of borrow from one day to the next, get into the tasks and actually move things around. For when I go down to this day level, you can see that's just not going to be, that is not going to be an option. I'm just going to go back up. If I want to get even more sort of metadata about this particular project, I can see that for the whole time period of this project, for the number of resources that we have the ability to assign quite a number of hours to folks. And at the moment, for the full length of this project, we're at 824 hours assigned. And we have some more information here. We're allocated at a 12.2% allocation. Again, not just for, if we look at the entire time period for this entire project. Over here, we could see for this particular date range, you can see Alan is right, like you would expect, he's right on the money there. So he's got 304 hours available for that time period, and he's currently at 304 hours for that time period. We could change the date range, of course, to see how things are looking, forward looking. So that is our resource utilization Power BI report. Just at least one other thing I'll point out. This is built into the app, right? So you're seeing the Power BI report kind of embedded within the BrightWork 365 app. You also have the option to open this up in the Microsoft Power BI service. Let's just open that up. This is not only true for the power utilization report that we're focused on now right here, but it would be for any of those Power BI reports that we're including in the product. So it's similar, but not exact. We're now in a specific web page for this Power BI report, right? So we're outside the app right now. And once you do that, you have some other capabilities. You can export either an image of this particular utilization Power BI report that we include in a PowerPoint slide. You can even do it as live data so that as the data changes, it would actually get updated within the PowerPoint slide. You can do an export of this to PDF if you wish. You can share this in various ways. You could also download the Power BI, it's called a PBIX file of this particular report so that it opens up within Power BI Desktop. And that gives you even more capability. If you were to go through, I'm not going to do this now for time constraints, but if I were to download this file, it would open up in my Power BI Desktop. I could actually then have unlimited refresh. I could refresh on demand. So if somebody were to go into a task and make a change right now, when I open this up in Power BI Desktop, on demand, I could do a refresh and see these values change immediately. If you're within the Power BI service, which we looked at a moment ago, or in the app, it would be on a schedule. So the data does get refreshed, but it would be on a schedule, however you have that set up in your organization. But maybe you personally don't want to be restricted by that refresh schedule. You can go ahead, assuming you have the right permissions, you can go ahead, download this resource utilization file and refresh as you wish. There's some other capabilities in this Power BI service as well. Let's just close that down. Okay, finally, we're again, that was the hard part, is sort of getting the picture of how status actually is. To actually create the status report, pretty simple. We would just go into the project. So here I'm in the project section of the app. We have here frozen desserts again. So now we're fully within the project, all those various things that you could do with project management. But in our case, what we're going to do is we're going to just, actually, no, I'm going to another project, sorry. I'm going to go into the one that says JW, JW widget grade. Okay, so here we are, we're in the project. I'm going to click on status reports. We have a prior status report here. That was from week 26. Let's just go ahead and create a brand new one. So just come over here to create a new status report for this particular project. I could do this at the program or the portfolio level as well. The behavior is going to be the same. So what it's doing is it's taking a snapshot of whatever the current sort of real-time status is. So let me just kind of back up a bit just to show you that. It's taking that from this page here, status. So what I would first do is actually come here to status. I would change the status, sort of how things are looking right now. I could change the percent complete, put a comment in. I can change those KPIs. So I saw quite a bit, perhaps, that concerns me. So I'm going to change the health to yellow. Cost, I didn't see a particular issue. Time might be an issue with our resources. Maybe I saw that the resources are kind of at their limit. Everything else I'm going to keep green. I could put some comments in. So this would be our, what's the status right now before I go and create that status report. I'm going to save that. Okay, so that's saved in our status tab. Now I can come to our status report tab, click on new status report, and you'll see that it grabbed, it's no longer green all over the place. It grabbed whatever I said was the current status right now, and that's locked. Okay, so you can't come in and change the status report after. It's just reading from what the project manager said things are at the moment. So you see yellow, green, just like we had. I can change the, let's make it for the end of this week. I could put some key accomplishments in. I'm just going to put something real quick in, EFGH. And the upcoming focus might be keep the resources from getting over allocated. And I could choose to either save a draft for this. So that's up to me. I can just click save and it would be a draft, or I can choose to complete the status report. In this case, I'm going to want to complete the status report, but first I'm going to choose to not only have a record of the status report, but I'm going to choose to email the report to the project sponsor, which should be me. I'm not limited to just the sponsor. I could also include additional email recipients if I wish for this status report. And we'll see what it looks like in the email. I'm going to complete this. Click complete. And I'm going to save and close that. And an email will be sent to the project sponsor, and if you chose to send it to other people as well. They can look at it in their email. It's going to look like this. Hopefully you're seeing this on your screen. So the email is going to come in. There you go. Let's just click on the newer one. It has a nice little salutation. This is the status report. It has handy links to get me right back into either the project portfolio or relevant program. And it has all those KPIs that I set. So your stakeholders can choose to just look at they can just choose to just look at the emailed report of status, or they can come into the project and actually get into the status report in that tab. Just click on it, and a slightly different view of that very same status report. And again, like I said, this could be done at the program level or the portfolio level. So that is sort of building ourselves up to creating the status report and then creating the actual status report. With that, I'm going to go back to our slide. And just real briefly, just as a review, we build our way up to the project and portfolio by looking at the portfolio health, clicking into there, maybe doing that the program as well, looking at our issues and our risk reports, taking a look at our overall allocation. Again, it doesn't show us over allocated, it just kind of shows us the health of the work that's going on within our project or projects. We might want to go further and look at how our resources are under allocated, perfectly allocated, or over allocated. And again, we could do that per project or across the entire portfolio. And finally, we capture the current status within the project or portfolio itself. We can look at a report in Power BI if we wish, specific to project status. It's called Project Status Dashboard, which we looked at. And of course, that email will go out as well to our folks. Okay, I'm going to take a breather. I'm going to invite Mihal back on the line and ask any questions that may have been posed.
That's great stuff, Jonathan. Thank you very much. You can take a well-earned break there. You can hear me okay? Just want to check, yeah?
Yeah, you sound fine.
Perfect. Okay, so folks, as we said before, we can take any questions that you might have about what we just saw there. We saw a lot. It's understandable. You might need some time to think about it. If you do, and you think of something later, or you might have some very specific questions, you might want to see a demo of BrightWork 365 for you or your team. I'm just going to pop through my colleague a link to my colleague's calendar, Adam. He's the best person to start with, and he has some contact details there as well. But the easiest thing is probably to follow that link that's just popped up in the chat. So that's the best place to start. So understandably, that was a lot to kind of go through today. So we don't have too many questions here. Just to give people some time to think about it, Jonathan, can you just maybe clarify some of the common licensing questions people might have for BrightWork 365, just while we give people a chance to ask some questions?
Well, sure. For that, I think it's best I bring up the, let me just bring up our knowledge base. Oops, let me.
It's usually the most common question asked, and it kind of.
Yeah. Well, you're going to need in addition to the BrightWork licensing that you can discuss with Adam, you'll also need your Microsoft Power Platform licensing as well. The specifics for that, let me just see if I can quickly get the.
So I can still see the thank you slide there, Jonathan, if you want to.
Yeah, I'm just going to bring.
Perfect.
Let's bring it up the knowledge base here. Yeah. So let's do a quick search for license. Yeah. So within the knowledge base, we have various licensing questions. Actually, I'm trying to think which would be the best place to go. Probably in this pricing and FAQs. So on our public website, brightwork.com, you can see information about the actual BrightWork licensing. If I go further down, you can see what licenses are needed to use BrightWork 365. I think I'll probably get, eventually when somebody reaches out to Adam, he might be able to remind folks of where they would go. But because it's a longer story, from our perspective, let's just say there's somebody, the simplest license would be if somebody in your organization only needs to log project requests. They don't need to interact with the system in any other way except submitting requests for a project. Then there's no paid license. You'd have to have some paid licenses for organization, but those additional users who are only going to be submitting project requests, they would not need a paid license. They would be using a free license just to submit project requests. Other folks who are going to have more interactivity with the product would need a paid license from BrightWork. And then we have a whole section here about what Microsoft specific licenses would be needed. So, there's too much information here for me to just kind of read off, but this would be licenses that you would procure directly from Microsoft.
No, that's great. I think it's great to signpost this because it's usually the first thing that people ask us. So you can find it on the front end of our website, and if you just go look at pricing in the top navigation, there's some really good information halfway down the page. So I think it's good to kind of signpost to that for sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's right here. Yeah, if you go to the main page you all mentioned, you could just find pricing.
Nice.
It'll be the same place that we were a moment ago.
Excellent. Thank you. So, folks, we actually don't have too many questions today, and I'm going to put it down to that to a very comprehensive webinar. I'm not going to. We've already kind of gone over the time we said we would keep you. I'm conscious people are very busy. It may happen though that you may think of something after the webinar, or as I said, we're going to send out the webinar recording tomorrow as early as we can. And if you're watching it again tomorrow, or your colleagues have any questions after watching it again, please do reach out to us. So you can reach out to us through the link that I sent through my email address, which you would have received the invites from. But the best person to talk to first of all would be our colleague Adam. I'm gonna. I think this is as good a place to Annie is to call it today, Jonathan. Thank you very much for an excellent presentation. And thank you everybody for joining us today. Hopefully we'll be chatting to you very soon. And if you're in the States, I hope you have a lovely long weekend this weekend.
Yeah. Thanks, Mihal. Thank you, everybody.
See you later, folks.
Okay, goodbye.